Today, I'm going to show you how to turn your N8n workflow into a fully working web application, also known as a Saas, which stands for Software as a Service. And no, this won't be one of those videos where I just show you how to hook a front end up to an N8n webhook and call it an app. Because besides the fact that you'll probably run into a lot of licensing issues, it's also just a boring and lame way to do it. So our app is going to have a complete front end, back end, authentication, payment system, and all the other good stuff. And it won't rely on N8n at all. And the best part is we're going to do this completely with AI. AI is going to create the whole stack from top to bottom. And all we're going to have to do is review and deploy. So let's jump right in. So this is the app that I created and it's called Tubeletter. And the idea from this app came from the N8n workflow that I made in my last video that turns YouTube videos into newsletters. And what Tubeletter does is essentially the same thing, but it gives you a little more control, right? So what you can do with Tubeletter is users can log in and they can add channels that they want to monitor or get newsletters for. And from there, they can see the videos on that channel. They can manually pick videos that they want to generate newsletters for. They can schedule newsletters to be sent at a certain time. You can also send friends a link and they can subscribe to that channel with you, and you both will get newsletters for that same channel at a specific time every day. And a few other little features like editing the newsletter and things like that. And this whole page was actually created with AI. So I didn't write any code for this, but this is in code. So this page was written in TypeScript, which is basically like JavaScript. And I used Google Gemini 3 and a little bit of Claude Opus. And as you can see, it did pretty well, in my opinion. We have a standard hero section here. So the newsletter assistant for YouTube creators. So that's kind of like the target audience that we're going for. And here we have like a little mock-up of what the app looks like when you log in. And here we have what Tubeletter does for you. So again, AI written newsletters. We also do audience management. So like I said, you can host sign-up pages where you can send to your friends and they sign up to get newsletters for the pages that you follow. You can also manage your subscribers, and you also get performance insight on how your emails are doing, if people are opening them, and how many emails were sent in a specific time, things like that. Again, just more of our page. And here we have the pricing. This is real as well. So we have a free tier, which is one connected channel. We have a pro, max, and I'll show you what everything looks like. So let's go ahead and sign in. So if you click get started for free, it brings you to our login page. And again, this entire page was created with AI. I didn't write any of the code for this. This is a cool detail here, this light animation on the cursor. I told Gemini 3 to add this just because I thought it'd be a cool touch. What we can do is we can log in with our Google account, or we can sign up with our email and a password. So I'm just gonna go ahead and log in with Google. So when you log in with Google for the first time, it's gonna ask you to create a username. So I'm gonna create the name Blue Hakeem 1. So it looked it up and the name is available. So I'll just hit continue. So now we are in the main dashboard of Tubeletter. As you can see, it looks like a standard application, right? And again, I have to keep reiterating this because just to get it through to people that I did not write any of the code for this. This was all done with AI. So all this that you're seeing here was done with AI. So real quick, I'll give you guys just a quick demo of Tubeletter, and then we'll jump into how to create all this. I'm just gonna show you a few of the features of Tubeletter, and this is really so you have an idea of just how far you can go with AI when it comes to building your apps. So let's go ahead and jump in. When you log into Tubeletter, the first thing you're gonna see is this get started section, and it'll just have a few directions on how to set up your account. The first thing you're gonna do is configure your YouTube API key, and Tubeletter uses the YouTube data API to fetch data about the channels that you connect. So it'll use it to grab things like the subscriber count, all the videos that they have posted, and a few other information about the channel. So let's go ahead and connect our API key. So when you click that, it takes you to settings, and you'll see a YouTube API section here. So what you're gonna do is enter your API key, and that's done. And we'll go to the next step. Then the checklist is gonna tell you to connect the YouTube channel. So I'll go ahead and connect my channel, for example. So when you hit connect channel, it'll find your channel and it'll show you the details. So as you can see, this is my channel, Blue Hakeem, and these are some of my videos at the bottom, and it even tells you my description. So this is what I meant by we use a YouTube data API to get all this information here. So let's go ahead and connect our channel. So now that our channel is connected, we need to add some subscribers. But the thing is, if we click here on subscribers, you'll see that you are basically your first subscriber. But let's go ahead and send ourselves a newsletter. So here under our Get Started section, we have our connected channels. And this is where all your connected channels will be. So what we can do is we can click settings, and we'll see we have some settings here. We could change the tone of the newsletter. So right now, since we're on the free plan, we're locked into professional. But if we were on the pro or max plan, we could change this to like witty or enthusiastic or just a few different tones. Here is our public sign up link. And this is what I meant by you can send your friends a link, and once they click this link, it'll take them to a page that lets them sign up to my channel or whatever channel that you have added on Tubeletter. So just to show you what that looks like, we can open a tab. And this is what the invite page looks like. So your friend will just add their email and their name if they want to, and they'll subscribe to the newsletter that you have following on your account. So now, like I said, and you can also get that link from clicking this here. So back to settings, you can activate the newsletter, and what this will do is it'll send you a newsletter of the latest video from that channel every day at 5 a.m. And you can turn this off if you want. It won't send you the video if it already sent it, so it'll only send you a newsletter of a video that it hasn't sent you a newsletter for already. And then we can also remove the channel here if we want to. So now let's go ahead into the channel. We'll click manage. And now it brings up my pretty face and all my YouTube videos. And you'll see we have options here for schedule, blast now, and draft. So real quick, I'll just make a draft of the YouTube to newsletter video. So we'll hit draft and create draft. And you'll see it start processing. And we could also run this in the background if we click this. So let's go ahead and do that. And when we click that, we're back on the page and we can check the progress of that here. So once that's done, it'll tell us that it's done, and we can go check it out in our campaigns tab. So we'll just give that a minute. All right, so it's done. And you can see here, it says draft completed, draft created successfully. And if we come to campaigns, we can see the newsletter that we made. We can click this button here to view it. And it shows us our newsletter. Blue Hakeem turns long YouTube videos into daily AI powered newsletters. Nice. So yeah, I have a whole newsletter here. I think it looks pretty good. Now, if I was on the max plan, I could edit it, but since I'm not, I'm just gonna go ahead and send it. And boom, it just sent our newsletter to our one subscriber. So now let's go ahead and check out that email. Here it is, YouTube to newsletter. Blue Hakeem turns long YouTube videos into daily AI powered newsletters. And you see we have our entire newsletter here. It looks really nice. All right. Yeah, and the cool thing, really cool thing is it even saw the link to my Skool community in the description, and it added it here. So, you know, if you're a YouTuber and you have links in your description, those can also be included in these newsletters. So yeah, it's really cool. And that is just a few of the features of Tubeletter. Now, let's go into how we built all this, which is what I guess most people are here for. So the first thing we're gonna do is jump into all the tools and components you need to build this app. And there are a few different things that you're gonna need. So the first thing is you're gonna need Cursor. If you don't know what Cursor is, it's an IDE. It's like VS Code. It's what you would use to write and manage your code. So if you don't know what it is, look into that, but it is free. And they have a paid tier, which I would recommend that you pay for. I think it's like $20 a month, but you can also use the free version. And besides Cursor, you're also gonna need a Cloud Code subscription. I recommend getting a Cloud Code subscription because you're eventually gonna run out of free credit on the Cursor tier. So Cloud Code, I notice it will last you a little longer, even if you just have that $20 subscription. So I definitely recommend these two tools. And honestly, we're gonna need them to be able to create our app from N8n. So the next thing, we're gonna touch on the development stack. So this is just all the development tools that we're gonna use to build our app. And for our backend, we're using Node.js and or Bun. So I initially was using Bun, but I switched back to Node.js, and I'll touch on that later in the video. For the front end, we're gonna use React, and we're going to deploy everything with Docker. Then we're going to use Supabase for our database, and also Supabase for our auth. And then we're using Stripe for payments. So if you don't know about all this stuff, honestly, my suggestion is you look into it. You know, like read up on how some of these things work, because if you don't know how they work, there's no way you would ever be able to make an app like this or like this, right? I'll be honest with you, it's not happening. All right, like if you don't know, if you don't have at least like an intermediate understanding of some of these topics here, then you might want to come back to this video after you maybe do a project or two on your own. So after the development stack, you're gonna need infra, right? So for our infrastructure, this is where and how we deploy the app on the actual internet, right? So we use Cloudflare for DNS. We're using a cheap Hostinger VPS. I got it for like $4 a month for a full year. So that's pretty good. And then we're using Traffic for our reverse proxy. And again, if you don't understand this might honestly not be the video for you, because you're gonna need to understand, you know, how this works. But I will say, if you can get yourself to the point where you have a decent understanding of all this in this section here and this stuff here, then you're gonna be able to make an app with no code with AI for sure. So right here, I have a little note. It's possible, but not easy, right? Like, it's definitely doable. As you can see, I did it. It works, you know. It's possible, but it's not easy. So again, you know, read up on some of this stuff here, you know, get a little more knowledge if you feel, you know, you're not comfortable with any of these topics. But if you are, let's move on to the next section. So again, the idea is we want to turn this N8n workflow into a fully functioning web app. So the first thing we want to do is build our backend, because N8n is essentially just a backend as a service platform, right? And this is essentially just a backend. So what makes the most sense is to get AI to build this part of our app first. So the first thing we're going to do that is download the workflow JSON, and we can find that here. So after we download this workflow, we're going to feed it back to the AI so that it knows exactly how we need our backend to be built. This workflow JSON carries pretty much all the information for each node, and it'll just help our AI kind of have a better context on what our backend should look like. So let's go ahead and start. So here we are inside of Cursor. And again, this is what we're going to use to develop most of our application. If you're not familiar with Cursor, it's very similar to something like Visual Studio Code. And they just have this chat feature here that lets you connect to other agents. So you can do Opus, or GPT. I'm just going to do Auto for now. And this chat agent here is aware of all the files in your project, which makes it really good for AI coding, right? So let's just go ahead and go through some of the files in this project. And these are the files that we're going to use as our foundation. These files are going to pretty much help our agent get started. So here we have agents.md. And what this file does is it gives all the specific instructions that the AI should follow on how to structure our application. So it's going to give details on things like the directory model, right? The package manager that we want to use. So you can see it says use bun exclusively. Then also about our other dependencies, so containerization and orchestration. So we're telling it that this project should use Docker, and it should have both front end and back end with individual Docker files, right? Some more environment specific stuff. We even have some information about CI/CD, how we want to do testing. So very specific about how we want this project to be structured. And I think this is really good because you don't want the AI to just figure it out on its own. Because if it does, it'll probably spit something out that will be a little hard to manage because it'll pretty much just freestyle, right? And you don't want that. You want it to be structured, and you want the AI to build the app in a way where it makes sense, right? And this is how apps make sense. You have a front end, you have a separate back end, and usually most apps are containerized these days. So this is really the best approach, in my opinion, anyway. So next we have our daily digest JSON. So this is just the JSON file we downloaded from our N8n workflow. And this just, again, gives our AI some context on what our workflow looks like and how it should be hooked up. Then we have our getTranscript.js file. And this file is the file in our workflow that does the work to fetch the transcript before processing it and sending it out as a newsletter. So again, the AI model will also need to kind of understand how we're getting our transcripts so it can set up that backend properly. So now that we have all these files, we can start prompting our agent to build our app. So I'm going to tell the agent, build a backend for my application. Okay, so I told it, build a backend for my application. Use the daily digest.json as reference on how the backend should work. Use getTranscript.js as context on how to pull transcripts. Then when you're done, create a README file that shows us how to hit the API for generating newsletters. And we don't have to reference this agents.md file. And that's because it's built into Cursor. So as you can see here, agents.md is a built-in Cursor feature. And Cursor will detect that file as long as it's in the .cursor rules directory, which ours is. So let's go back to Cursor. And again, cursor/.cursor/rules, and we have our agents.md. So we should be good to go. So let's run that. So you see it's going to read our files, and then it's going to start planning our project. So as you can see, again, it says building the backend based on the workflow, creating the initial to-do. And then it created a to-do list of everything it needs to do to get this project or get our backend up and running. So you see create backend directory structure, following project rules, exactly. Set up package.json with bun required dependencies. So it's following all the rules that we dictated in this agents.md. and then it's going to do everything, and then at the end it's going to create a README with our API documentation. And this is exactly what we want, right? Because we need an API so we can move our workflow off of N8n. And as soon as we do that, it makes it really easy to continue on and make a front end and add a database and authentication. So let's wait for this to finish and see what we get. So it did finish and it did implement our backend implementation, but there is something I want to change. So if you look here, it says newsletter service generates HTML newsletters using OpenAI/OpenRouter. I don't want to do that. I actually want to use LangChain. So we're going to tell it to do that. Use LangChain to create our AI agent. Remove OpenRouter implementation. So I said use LangChain to create our AI agent and remove OpenRouter implementation. So we want to use LangChain just because it's a little more flexible and we can do a little more, like add tools and change the model if we feel like. So let's go ahead and do that. And you'll see it's updating the newsletter service to use LangChain and removing OpenRouter. And we're gonna wait for that to finish. Okay, so now it's done, and this took about 1 minute and 30 seconds, maybe 2 minutes, right? And as you can see, it implemented LangChain instead of OpenRouter, and it says it removed OpenRouter and it made the OpenAI API key required, and it updated our dependencies. So from there, I think we're all good. I'm gonna keep all. And if we go into this README file now, we can see the instructions on how to deploy this API and how to actually use it. So if we look here, it says a backend API service that generates professional newsletter articles for YouTube video transcripts. Here, this has some instructions on how to install the dependencies, how to configure the environment. And again, since we had in our agents.md file that we want this application to be containerized, it made us a Docker Compose file here. And if we look in this Docker Compose file, you'll see we have our backend service declaration here, and it specifies the build. So the Docker file will be an application backend that will be here. So here's our Docker file, and this file just specifies how the application should be built, right? So just for example, it'll use bun as the base, and then it'll start in this app working directory, and it'll go through, copy all the files, and then it'll run bun run to build the application. And then when it's done, it'll expose it on port 3000, and we should be able to use it from there. So next, all we need to do is deploy this Docker container now. So after we deploy this container, we should be able to hit the API and get our newsletters similar to how our N8n workflow worked, right? So let's go ahead and try that. All right, so before we deploy the application, we need to set up our environment variable. So if we go back to the README, we can see here, we have a step for configure environment, and it says copy the example environment file and fill with your API keys. So that's exactly what we're gonna do. So I'm just gonna say copy.env.example into env, which is the same thing it told us to do here. So now that we have a .env file, this is what it looks like. And we're just gonna enter our API keys. So we'll go with our YouTube API key first, or actually we'll do the OpenAI API key first. It's already in my clipboard. And then we'll do the YouTube API key. Don't worry, these are temporary keys, so I'm gonna delete them right after. And then we have this feature here for our residential proxy URL. This is optional, you don't need this. So all you need is the YouTube API key and OpenAI API key. That's if you're following this at home and you just wanna practice with this project. So we should be good to run this now. We're just gonna save this file, and we're gonna come back to our terminal, and we're just gonna run Docker Compose upd -- build. We want to make sure we run this command in the same folder that we have all our application files in. So in this case, for me, it's N8n2 app, as you can see here. And this N8n2 app is where all these files are. And it's also where our Docker Compose file is. So let's go ahead and run this. And it'll just start doing all this stuff. Okay, so we did come across an error, and as you can see here, it says error from the response daemon, bind for port 3000 failed, port already allocated. And that just means we already have something running on port 3000 on our computer. So we just want to change that. So what I'm going to do is come back to the env file, and we're going to look for this backend port variable, and I'm going to change it to 3023 just to be safe. And now we're gonna run it again. And as you can see, it started successfully. So let's go ahead and look at the logs for this backend. And as you can see, it says newsletter API server running on port 3000, environment development, and health check is here. Okay, so now we have our backend running, and we should be able to hit it like any other API. So let's go ahead and give that a try. If we open our README, we have instructions here on how exactly we need to hit that backend. So as you can see, it gives us some instructions. So here's an endpoint API newsletter generate, and this endpoint generates a newsletter from a YouTube channel's latest video. And as you can see, it's gonna need a request body with the channel name, and this is what it should look like, for example. And this is what the response should look like. If we come down, we can see it gave us an example of how to do this with just the curl command. So let's go ahead and copy that. And we'll come in our terminal and we'll just paste that. So instead of port 3000, remember we're on 3023 because we have to change it, right? So let's go ahead and do that. So curl post to localhost 3023 and with the channel name, and we're just going to use this channel for example, and let's press enter, and we got an error, internal server error message. So this isn't bad, this is good. So because we're using Docker, right, our agent will actually be able to see that error. So here was the error it gave. So we're gonna copy this error and we're gonna tell our agent about it. Okay, so we told it we got an error after attempting to hit the generate newsletter endpoint. Check Docker logs with with this command, Docker logs newsletter backend. And then I'll just say fix it, just so it's sure. Okay, so I asked it to fix the error, but instead of fixing the error, it just made the error response a lot more robust, and it made it so when we have an error, it gives us more detail. So this is when that Cloud Code subscription I mentioned will come into play, because it seems like in Cursor, the free tier, the agents they use in the auto mode isn't as smart. So we're gonna use Claude and Opus to see if we can get this fixed. So I'm just gonna run Claude, and now Claude comes up, and I'm just gonna give it the error we got, which is this here, and I'm gonna say our backend returns this error. That's it. So our backend returns this error. Can you figure out why and fix it? So we're gonna let Cloud 4 Opus do this. So Cloud is a lot smarter, and I have a feeling it'll be able to figure this out. So let's give it a minute and we'll be back. So Cloud let us know that we didn't actually have an error. We just copied the command wrong. It kind of fixed it in our README, and we're just gonna go ahead and run that again. So here's the curl command again. So we're gonna restart our backend. Okay, so we restarted the backend. Now we're gonna try the command again and see what we get. Nice. So as you can see, we got a response back, success true, with the data, and here is our newsletter in HTML format. So if we really look very close, it says what happened in the video. So Tom Lee highlights the critical importance of the 10 best days rule in 2025. Lee detailed the performance of Fundstrat's ETFs. So this worked exactly how we wanted, right? So we essentially just turned our N8n workflow into a standalone backend API that you no longer need N8n to use, right? And this is essentially the foundation of our application, because now that we have an API that we can use to make these newsletters, we can build a whole application around it. And that's pretty much what I did with Tubeletter. So in my next video, I'm going to show you how we can build a front end, a landing page, and how we integrate a database authentication and everything else into this project. But for now, if you want any of the files that we use to start, you can find them in my Skool community. And if you like this video and found it useful, like and subscribe, and don't be shy to join my Skool community, where I'm going to be going more in depth on topics like this. So thanks again, and peace.